Welcome to the Confidently Balance Your Hormones podcast. My name is Davidson, and I'm a hormone health expert, master mindset coach, and multiple wellness business entrepreneur. I'm obsessed with helping you experience hormone balance, confidence, self-love, and live a life full of joy. I know we're about to have so much fun together, so thank you so much for pushing play today. And now let's begin. Welcome to another episode of Confidently Balance Your Hormones. This is your guide, Dee Davidson, and today we will hear from Beth Sandlin, who is passionate about empowering people to embrace wellness at every age. Specializing in dynamic at-home Pilates workouts, her approach is all about mindful movement and nurturing the nervous system. With her popular YouTube channel and online programs, Beth offers transformative Pilates sessions that are accessible and enjoyable. Beth's philosophy of aligned action ensures that every movement is a step towards achieving your wellness goals. As an outdoor enthusiast, she also integrates the rejuvenating power of nature into her holistic approach and well-being. Join Beth on a journey to ageless vitality, where every action is an opportunity to enhance your own health and happiness. So welcome, Beth. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Dee. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I love so many of the things you and I talked about on our, pre-show call in regard to your own experiences, Pilates, the nervous system. I think it's one of the challenges I find with my clients over and over again, because we've been conditioned to go, 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 and we want to take a supplement and eat, the foods, and we want to do the crazy exercise. And I always come back to the nervous system and telling people that you can't trick your body or your nervous system. So when we talk about Pilates, which I'm a huge fan of, it's something that my listeners need to hear about and really let it sink in. And I think your story is really, really great and will resonate with a lot of the listeners. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been sharing on this topic, all that good stuff.
I would love to do that. So I've been teaching Pilates for about 20 years now. I got into moving with the Pilates method about a year and a half after I had cancer. I went into full remission and have been in remission since my initial cancer diagnosis. And as challenging as that was, it also shifted my career path and life's path to really what I do today, focusing on movement that's beneficial for not only our body, but for our overall nervous system, how that supports our interactions with other people. Because what I realized is, if I didn't have the strength and stamina to do simple everyday activities, well, it wasn't very pleasurable. And I couldn't do the things that I enjoyed doing, even as simple as like taking a walk with friends. So that really started my life's path along that. And then throughout the years, I've experienced pregnancy and did Pilates throughout both of my pregnancies. And even though I had that big aha, like our health is vitally important at the age of 20 when I had my cancer diagnosis, it's really easy to kind of slip away from that and go back into maybe patterns that aren't very helpful. And that's what I was starting to do until I began learning more about trauma and the nervous system, and that really was the key to unlock the door for me of how to take aligned action for sustained motivation, which isn't always like, yes, I totally want to go do that most challenging Pilates workout and like run up the hill. Sometimes it's a different, more subtle motivation, and helped me then share that message with other people as well.
I love so many of the little nuggets of wisdom that you just shared, because it's, again, constantly reiterated through my practice with my clients. I have quite a few women who have been through cancer treatment, and we could talk a little bit about that if you're comfortable. Just even receiving a diagnosis like that, when you're a woman that is, I don't even like to say type A, but go-getter and can take on any challenge, and this isn't going to hold you back. And these women come out of treatment and they are telling me, well, I walked 2 miles today, and it's like you get a badge of honor for getting back to pushing through. And your body again is not asking for that push. It's asking for that healing, and it's asking for you to go within. So is there anything you want to share with the people who might be listening who have gone through cancer treatment or have just gotten a diagnosis in regard to allowing themselves to heal?
Yeah, and I like that you bring up it's not only cancer diagnosis, it could be recovering from illness or injury or just a really high stressful time that we're experiencing. Is that rest and recovery is just as essential, if not more, at certain phases of our life compared to let's get back on track with, focusing on eating and sleep and our exercise as well. And that I really had a big aha when in between my rounds of chemotherapy, thought, okay, I'm going to go back to the gym now. My doctors didn't say I couldn't. And I tried to work out and it was just not happening at all. And
Mm-hmm.
so I realized,
Mm-hmm.
okay, actually during this month's time between my rounds of chemotherapy, what would be better for me to do is rest more. Sure, I can go on walks, but nothing high intensity. Just let my body heal a little bit more. And that rest and recovery then helped me for my next round and then the following round. And as I was going through then my maintenance treatment, which was approximately 2 years long, my fluctuations would change. Sometimes I've had really high energy, other times really low, depending not only upon the treatments that I was on during like that week, but also what else was swirling around in my life. I was starting to get back into the routine of going to college and studying for that. And then layered on, okay, now I'm ready to layer on working part-time again. And all of these elements had to affect my workouts. And what I realized is once I started tuning into that a little bit more, it was more beneficial for me. And my workouts no longer like crash my system, or the opposite, where sometimes when we're thinking a workout needs to be incredibly challenging or long, we may say to ourselves, we're not motivated, but really that lack of motivation, what our brain is telling us is our body is actually just sending signals. We need to do something a little bit different. So what I love is
Mm-hmm.
once we tune into what are those signals our body is sending us, can we understand them at a different level than what has been told to us in the past when it comes to exercise,
Mm-hmm.
which is if you're not motivated to do that long, challenging workout, then you just need to push through. And as
Mm-hmm.
women in particular, we have such wisdom that we share with others, many times our children and their families. And I just like to turn that wisdom inward and start listening to ourselves, because that's not only beneficial for us, but also for those around us so they could see that example.
Truly. When a new client onboards with me, one of the first things I tell them is that my goal is for them to get back into their body. I feel that so many, especially women, are on autopilot. They're so disconnected from what their body needs or doesn't need. And that shift has to happen. We got to get out of the mind and the brain and what society has told us and get back into being connected with our body. Because if not, we're running constantly on that sympathetic nervous system, right? And we're in constant fight or flight. And a lot of the women, and I don't know what your experience with cancer or, again, any diagnosis for anyone listening, but a lot of the women who have gone through cancer told me that that was a big shift in their life, that they know and can admit that they did run out of that place of fight or flight for a large portion of their life.
You definitely, I think we're just encouraged to jump back into that. And I also experienced at different points with my cancer, depending upon what treatment I was undergoing, actually a different like nervous system response, and that was more disassociation, which
Mm,
can really happen quite frequently as well. And sometimes, in particular, with disassociation, it's harder to recognize because it's not that energy that's like amped up.
sure,
It's more subtle in our bodies or more subtle for how other people are operating. And we've all experienced some sort of dissociation. Sometimes it's
sure.
more positive, like daydreaming, for example, or zoning out, like, oh, wait, what did you just say? I kind of went somewhere else. That's a like everyday example of
Sure.
disassociation. And once I made that connection, it was years later that I made the connection. Oh my goodness, like when this event was happening consistently, I was using strategies just automatically to detach from that
Ah,
experience.
sure.
And it was when I went through something else medically about 10 years after my cancer, like that pattern just came back. And I was in
Mm,
a different place to be more aware of it.
mm,
That's actually protecting me, whether it's a response to drive and push harder or
hmm
disassociate. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about our brain is we do have our prefrontal cortex that can help us understand the information once we know what that means, rather than just in the terms of healthy living. Oh, if we aren't doing the strategies that have worked well for us in the past, well, so oftentimes we layer on guilt and we try to get
Oh,
back to
yeah.
what worked well for us rather than focusing, well, what is our body telling us? What is our life stage right now? And it's not only with things like cancer or surgery, it's with everyday life that we have these shifts. And you and I were talking about before pressing record on this, how easily these shifts can happen. Like, oh,
hmm
my kids aren't going to be at school.
Yes, we
They're
have to be
home.
flexible.
That
That's something I had to
flexibility.
learn. Flexibility was not in my vocabulary for many, many years. Did not
Yes.
handle that transition very well.
And that piece is so essential. I realized when my kids were very young, like the moment I felt like I have it down, their nap schedule changed, their
hmm
overall schedule changed. And I realized, oh, if I actually want to continue working out or, planning my meals, I have to have some adaptability in there. I can't
hmm
hold on to what worked when they were on their two nap schedule compared to the one, compared to now they're much older and they don't nap at all. So
Sure.
that adaptability is so essential. And it's challenging because we haven't really talked about that in the context of what that looks like for moving our body.
Uh-huh. It's true. And, I know we started with talking about trauma, and I think there's a lot more talk about trauma nowadays. And I see even, Instagram or TikTok, they're even like, oh gosh, like our parents are like, you do not have any traumas, right? Like we had a fine childhood, but our generation is becoming more aware that trauma doesn't just have to be, you were in this car accident or you were physically abused, that there's trauma with a big T and trauma with a little t. And I love that Dr. Gabor Mate, I follow him, and he says that all the time. Everyone has little T traumas. So can you just share a little bit about how, like, maybe some different types of trauma, first of all, and how trauma affects the nervous system?
So my broadest definition, and so working definition, it's constantly evolving. So if we were to circle back in a year, perhaps it might be changing, is that trauma is a disruption in a connection to our most authentic self. When we start to put up protective walls, and sometimes these are very hard shells. That was my protective mechanism. Other times it's being a people pleaser, and that's sometimes known as a fawn response, very accommodating, sometimes overly accommodating and putting ourselves last, which I know a lot of women can definitely do. We put everyone else in front of ourselves, and then it can lead to burnout. When we think about different events, you mentioned some like accident or abuse of some kind. Sometimes people don't even remember their trauma because perhaps it was intergenerational, that carried down through their lineage. Perhaps it's more community based. And one thing that I really appreciate about how our understanding of trauma has evolved is, rather than focusing on the event, is how is that one person's experience with the event
hmm
and what are those long lasting effects. And it's once we can kind of understand and connect the dots, that can be incredibly helpful. And we just weren't talking about this in the past. So as an example, I was known, or am known, as a cancer thriver. In fact, I still get asked to participate in research studies all the time of how I'm doing memory wise and just physical ability. And it was about 3 years after I had cancer, I was in a group where they were looking at people who were cancer survivors or thrivers and people who weren't doing so well, whether it was physically, cognitively, socially, whatever it may be. Yet when I went to the hospital to participate in this study group, when I sat down in the waiting room, I just immediately started crying. And at the time, I didn't know I was actually in
hmm
a triggered response because it was the same environment I was in for the treatment,
Sure.
and it just all came back. even though everyone said, you're doing great, you're in
Mm-hmm.
college and look at
Mm-hmm.
you're getting good grades and you're back to working and you're working out. And yet no one explained that actually maybe there's something else going on.
Mm-hmm.
And even to this day, when I wash my hands with certain soap, usually in another hospital or sometimes even the mall, it's like, oh, that's the soap I
Oh,
used
yeah.
when I was undergoing my cancer treatment. And now I can understand it. And that understanding is so helpful. Like, I am safe, I am fine, I am not where I was.
Uh-huh.
And that really was helpful for me to look at my reactions and responses, not only to like soap or being in an environment, but sometimes the way people are talking with me as well. And rather than having shame around that, just, okay, that's interesting, having more acceptance. And that gives us something to move forward with of what's going to be most beneficial.
That is so true with so many things, with emotional eating, right? With you drive past this donut shop that your grandfather took you to, all of those responses that come back from a lifetime of things. So thank you for sharing those experiences with us. So let's move to the Pilates. First of all, I think there might be people here who are curious. I have been asked before, well, what is Pilates? People don't really understand what it is. They might be intimidated by it. They might think it's going to be really strenuous poses and things like that. Can you share with us a little bit about Pilates itself and anything that might help someone feel more inept to try it?
Of course. Pilates is a mind body movement system. So we're looking at not only sometimes doing more challenging exercises, but really ensuring that the exercise, the class that someone's moving with is suitable for them. And that's really where Pilates excels. It's not, we're trying to get somewhere really quickly. We are looking at how are we going to personalize this, whether it's using a small piece of equipment, changing the body position in some way. So rather than like straight legs, perhaps bending the legs, really tuning in to what's going to be most beneficial for their own movement experience. And I distinctly remember when I first started Pilates, like it felt a little awkward, some of the exercises, but there was also some that were familiar from going to the gym. I mean, moving our body is moving our body. So we will see whether someone does yoga or they are doing strength training, they're going to see some similar movements in all of these. Or maybe do we talk about them and teach them a slightly different way? Yes. We can do Pilates out of our home. We can go to a studio. I specialize right now in home workouts because as a mom, especially when I was working full-time out of the house, I realized home workouts were the only way I could really consistently fit in working out. So I really like to work out of my basement in my home. And that's what I teach at this point. And so I encourage anyone who is maybe just interested in trying Pilates, and it's wonderful for strength, range of motion, so like mobility, flexibility, balance. It checks a lot of the boxes for physical conditioning, is give it a try, give it a try, and give it a try. So at least 3 times, because it may feel a little bit different at first, and different isn't necessarily bad. It's just takes some time for our body to understand some new movements, perhaps. And the more you come back to it, the more familiar you're going to get with the exercise or the overall class. It's kind of like when we were first starting to introduce foods to our kids. Like sometimes they didn't like it right away, but we gave it a try a few more times and turned it into their favorite food. There's a lot
Sure.
of examples that we can have with this where we tried something and we were like, I'm not sure, but you just keep at it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is my new favorite obsession.
I love that. Many of the women that come to me, they do functional labs. I think you know that. And I show them this HPA axis dysfunction roller coaster, if you will. Most of us start off life in the green, which is pretty happy and balanced and at ease. Some people don't even start life that way, but most of us do. And as life goes on and different stressors and traumas and things happen, we get out of that state of balance. And many of the women that come to me, when we test their hormones or their cortisol, they're in either a compensating place. So they could go back to the yellow and the green pretty quickly if we work on cleaning some things up. But a lot of them are close to the exhaustive phase, which is when you maybe get some kind of diagnosis, you need more medications, you need a surgery. So we have to be really careful as we're healing the body as a whole through diet and rest and maybe some supplements, and maybe we have to get rid of some bad bacteria and things to not add more stressors. And you and I know that exercise can be very beneficial, but it also can be a stressor if you already have a pile of things in your personal life, and then you have these hidden stressors, maybe low stomach acid, maybe bad bacteria, things like that, that you're trying to heal. How do you see Pilates helping these women stay feeling like they're doing something physically, but not overdoing it or making it a stressor on top of everything else that's going on with their body?
Thank you for the question, because this is so valuable for not only if we look at purely physical conditioning, that we want not only more challenging workouts and exercises, but we want something slower, more soothing, more restorative. It reaches different elements of physical conditioning, which is really beneficial. And also it tunes into different elements of our nervous system. So those higher energy workouts, which can be running, it could be a very fast-paced Pilates class as well, is going to engage the sympathetic nervous system. Now, someone's sympathetic nervous system is going all the time, chronic stress or other things going on in their life, then sometimes continuing to move with that type of workout isn't going to be beneficial. They may be more primed for that if maybe they are used to that type of movement. What can be really helpful then is shifting gears into a workout that's a little bit slower, focusing more on breathing, a larger range of motion. So this is wonderful for a nervous system. It's not going to be engaging the sympathetic nervous system as much. It's going to be reaching more towards the element of mobility, range of motion. We can still get strength sometimes depending upon the exercises and class. But this is a really good type of session when someone is trying to get everything else in order, when it feels like just too much, and maybe it's because of the labs that they brought awareness to that. It can really help to tune in to when would it be beneficial to do something a little bit slower, when do we want to turn up that dial of intensity so that I'm working a different element. And I think one aspect that a lot of people are concerned about, like, but I don't do my workout today or this week or this month, it's just all ruined. And it's really not. That's not how exercise works, much like nutrition. It's not one meal, it's not 1 week, it's not even 1 month. We are talking about a lifetime, which can either be motivating or really, oh my gosh, I have to do this a lifetime. And it becomes, I have to do this a lifetime when we are working out of alignment with what's beneficial for us. It becomes motivating when, oh, so if I take a month or 2 and I'm really doing things differently, I'm finding what's going to be beneficial for me. Well, I know that's 2 months out of a year, out of 2 years, out of 5 years. And if I use this as a reset period, I'm going to go so much further, because like you mentioned, if we could keep pushing in the wrong way, something's going to stop us, whether, we just have a major pause or it feels like we can't do anything else. A lot of people I know, they end up getting injured in some way or sick. And so our body will put on that break eventually. And I found the more people start adjusting the workouts, turning down the intensity, and sometimes turning up that dial of intensity when it's appropriate, that they're able then to maintain a more consistent workout program, which doesn't mean constant. So we're not doing the same thing all the time. We're adding more variety, which is just like nutrition, so beneficial for our body when it comes to moving with exercise and specifically with Pilates.
Well, I hope a lot of my clients are listening into this podcast, because sometimes I understand, because I used to be a boot camp girl and spin class and all of those things. And I have changed my view on exercise. I was that person that said, I got to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday to boot camp, Tuesday, Thursday weights, blah, 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 blah. I'm on a schedule. If I miss it, I feel like, oh gosh, I'm off. And I teach joyful movement now, which means you're listening to your body. You're not going to lose your muscles if you don't go to the gym for a week. Maybe your body needs to rest. Maybe you have a lot of stressors going on. And I have to chuckle because a lot of my clients who are in that mindset that I was in, I believe that I'm a spiritual person, that the universe, God, whatever you believe in, gives us these lessons so that we can help other people embrace them and overcome them. And the women will text me and they'll say, well, my trainer, it doesn't understand why I can't go back to them, or tell me again why I can't do this weight training, or and it's like they keep hitting their head on the wall, wanting to push through instead of embracing the place that they're at, whether it be in the healing journey or just life. So I just really am glad that you said that. And I hope a lot of listeners catch that from somebody else. Do you have different levels of Pilates on your program website? How would someone know which one to go for?
So at first it was only levels, where it was beginning, level 1, which is a little bit more than a beginner, level 2, and level 3, level 3 being the most advanced. And what I started realizing from feedback, specifically from people who are in the membership and app, is they were asking, why does that level 2 workout seem easier than the level 1 workout? And so from there at Trifecta Pilates, we created different styles of workouts, everything from very restorative through power workouts, and in between are connect and flow. Because if we move with a power level 1 workout compared to a connect level 2 workout, most likely that power workout is going to feel more challenging. And so power is for those high energy days. We are not going to most likely move with that workout every single day. We want to have some rest, whether it's passive rest or active rest. Active rest could be more restorative workouts. Sometimes it can be into the connect style of workout. And the styles of workouts has been the most helpful thing for people who I work with, because rather than thinking it has to be that challenging Pilates class or just focusing on the level, they get to focus on how they're feeling. And something that can be helpful, think about, what music would you turn on right now? Like, that's not, for most of us, that's going to change sometimes depending upon the time of day or what day it is, our energy level. And that question sometimes can help people determine what class they want. So if they're like, I want like a very class or a song that is, I'm going to be dancing around to, compared to, I just want to listen to my playlist where it's like meditation music and it's very slow. Well, that can give us a shift where our nervous system is at and what type of workout to begin with. And sometimes what happens is that's the type of workout that someone will continue for the next 20 minutes or even an hour. Other times it's a nice kind of warm up, and then they realize, okay, I'm ready actually to turn up that dial of intensity a little bit more. So it helps people gauge where their energy is at, and then they just correlate that to the type of workout with Pilates that's going to be most helpful for that day.
Can we remind women also that if they're cycling, they need to not fight the flow, if you will? It's as crazy as it sounds. I have women and they tell me they're having the worst PMS. And then we talk about what they're doing for exercise leading right up to the week before their period. And I hear that they're forcing, these crazy workouts. So I love that you have a wide variety. And I just believe that women would benefit if they just listen to their body and track their cycle. If you're cycling and you're not tracking, you could feel so much better and have, you might not have crazy energy, but you might feel a little bit better if you were tracking and accommodating what's going on through your cycle.
100%. It's that awareness piece, rather than thinking, why this week am I really motivated and I have a lot of energy, and then next week I just lack motivation. It doesn't feel like I want to do anything. Well, it could be because of that cycle. And I found the more someone tunes into that, and of course, other factors that are many times influenced by their cycle, their sleep that they're getting, the food that they feel like, how they're interacting with others. It's great information to take what we're going to do when we move with Pilates. And that is so important. Just yesterday, I started my period and it was like okay, I could feel it coming. Okay, it started. Like I'm in that in tune with it. And I know from tracking this for so long that, okay, I'm going to adjust my intensity of working out. I know it's not good for me to do absolutely nothing, but I turn down that dial of intensity by a lot. And I'm okay to do that for a day, sometimes a few days, just depending upon how I'm feeling. And the more people start doing that, I really feel like it's empowering information, and it goes from kind of like yo-yo with our motivation to we have more information with what our body is actually telling us it needs at that point in time.
Right on, sister. This has been so informative. I appreciate you coming on. Where can our listeners connect with you?
You can find me at trifectapilates.com, or you can find more about the YouTube channel or the membership and app.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Beth. It's been a pleasure.
And it was so great to be here. Thanks so much, Dee.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Confidently Balancing Your Hormones. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend and also hit follow at the top of this podcast. If you have a couple of minutes and you can leave a quick review, it will help other women in need find this podcast. You can find me on Instagram at confidently_love_yourself. I would love to stay connected and hear from you.